Hi and welcome to another edition of the Leadership Untitled podcast with me, Rob Moores. This is the show that brings together experts from the fields of leadership, L&D, coaching, HR, you name it, to share hints and tips and just have conversations that will hopefully help you navigate that field of leadership that little bit easier. My guest this week is Nicholè McGill-Higgins. And you may ask, what's this got to do with Piña Coladas? Well, it'll all become clear as we go through this conversation, and what a great conversation it is, ranging all the way from the latest programmes that she's running herself, but also going back to the basics of, is coaching accreditation actually needed or not? Can't wait for you to hear this conversation, so let's welcome Nicholè to the podcast. Hi Nicholè, welcome to the Leadership Untitled podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Very, very well. How are you?
I'm awesome, Tar. Not bad at all. It seems like an obligatory thing I have to say, oh, the weather's wonderful in Congleton today at the start of every episode. I do a weather update for people. Because that does affect my mood, whether it's lovely and I can step out or whether it's just absolutely swimming in it like it normally is.
Yeah, right? Oh, bless you. Mine, it's okay down here, to be honest.
And for those watching on YouTube, I also need me one of them thrones that you've got.
Darling, you've got me from the Queen seat today.
Honestly, if you're just listening to this podcast, you've got to go over to the YouTube recording just to take a look at least once. Just the wonderful seat and cushions and flowers that Nicholè has behind her. It's inspiring me to change my setup. I think I might have one of those the castle setups like Skeletor had in 𝗖𝗍𝗄𝗏. You know what I mean? Just like a big throne of bones. I might go with that.
Or the Iron Throne in GOT, if you want.
Let's do it. Yeah, or just a big brother chair. That'd be good.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start off, Nicholè, by just kind of saying why it is I've reached out to people, invited them to come on. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on. And I guess, our association goes back to meeting up at Coaching Culture with the lovely 𝗘𝗩𝗘𝗥𝗏 and co. And so seeing you, well, obviously I think in person, but also on the stage and just kind of chatting with you separately, there was two big passions coming through. And obviously there's a load more that you do as well, which we'll go into. But coaching was obviously one of them, because that was the link. Your passion for coaching, your belief in coaching as a tool and all those things. But also, as it always kind of came out in those talks that I was witnessing, was that the idea of belonging. So obviously on the cushions as well, you've got your belonging.
I do, darling.
Which tends to tie into that kind of diversity and inclusion, but with your own angle from it. So I was keen to kind of get you on because I've not really talked about it from that angle on these shows, so I thought it'd be a good way to start. But before we go into it all, how did you get into everything that you now do?
Everything
you now do. Well, how did you get into the belonging stuff and everything?
So belonging. To be honest with you, so I've always coached. From you're a manager, you naturally coach, and I've always done voluntary kind of work and that on boards, etc. So I've always done the coaching stuff. I've always been a manager, I've been a senior manager, so I've always done the coaching and mentoring. When I won my first award in 2019, and that was National Mentor of the Year, so I do enjoy the mentoring, but I just thought, coaching's pretty good, or counselling, so I wasn't sure which one. So I wanted to be a counsellor, like in Meet the Fockers. I wanted to do the whole sex counselling stuff. I was like, I can do this. I can get, because of past experiences anyway. But I thought, let me do counselling. So I started to look up around it. And then I just realized that at that point in my life, I just realized that when it comes to sex counselling and stuff like that, usually, or majority of the time, it can come from a dark place. And I just didn't want to do it that at that time. And then I looked at coaching and I thought, well, I've actually been doing this all my life, even from before I knew it was coaching. And when my last job, I used to coach the mentors and help the mentees. So I thought, well, let me get qualified in it. Let me learn some good tools. Started to look at it a lot more. So I thought, let me formalize it. So I'm now a master coach. It's taken me 6.5 years to get here, by the way. And the last year of doing that course kicked my ass, I have to say. But then when I look at the belonging side, my last role as well, I used to be the co-chair for the Race at Work group. So you've got these employee resource groups or staff networks, different various names. But basically, they're a group of individuals within an organization that looks at the diversity and inclusion. They normally either from one of the protected characteristics, or they could be a collective. It absolutely depends. And I was the co-chair for the Race at Work group for the CIPD. And then while I was doing this, I just, you just have this epiphany. And one of my colleagues, Chip, he said the word belonging. And it's almost like, it was like, da-da, like this epiphany, like, yeah, I'm not just a woman. I'm not just my color. I'm not just my sexuality. Because I got a lot of intersections going on over here. Trust me. I got a hell of a lot, right? So for me, it was like, no, people just want to be seen, heard, valued for who they are. And then to me, that just went boom with coaching. It made sense in my head. And then I decided that, okay, so I resigned from my job and I really started off talking about anti-racism more. But like I said, no one has ever come up to me and said, so how's your blackness? So, how's your gender going? How's your dyslexia going? You don't do that. So I thought, no, I find it divisive. I personally found that it was quite divisive because it's almost like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I do understand that there's different experiences and the lived experiences for different demographics, including myself. But the end goal, most people in the work that I've been doing want to be seen, heard, welcomed, valued, and appreciated. And when it comes to belonging, again, Rob, it was a journey that I was doing the corporate beehive. So I've got a part of my business, it's called the corporate beehive. And that's building that hive mentality of collaboration because we have to work together. What's the lived experiences of the people in your organization? Are we working together? But then it was the belonging to oneself that came into play as well, hence the courage to be. Because if we don't know who we are, if we don't have the courage, and I'm pointing to my cushion here, because I've got a program called The Courage to Be, if we don't have the confidence to be who we are, then how the hell do we know what we align to? So belonging became a massive part of my business, hence it's called belonging. And the bee is the logo. I love the way that the worker bees are, just a history of the bees. The bees are just amazing insects in everything that they do. But the B actually stands for belonging, empathy, and equity. And I purposely didn't put equality. It used to be equality, but I changed it to empathy. Because when you look at belonging to oneself, we want to belong. We should have empathy towards ourselves, and we should be fair to ourselves. For example, I always say, be mindful how you're saying yes to others and no to yourself. There's around boundaries. So that's what that's about, the courage to be. And then within an organization, do your people feel like they belong? Is there empathetic leadership? Is there equitable leadership? So that's how the two sides kind of go in my corporate world. So that's how I got into belonging. I realized that was, for me, it was more of a powerful journey.
Oh, I love that. There's a couple of things that stood out there. One was being more like Barbara Streisand. One of the fuckers. I've got a great film that was.
Right.
But the other one was, it's just, so I've got this tool that I use myself personally, which I won't go too much into, but it's all about leading yourself before you can lead others. So what really
Absolutely.
I love about what you've just said there is just taking this to the next level and going, the identity maybe that you have for yourself, is that a bunch of labels that you've kind of gone into a group think of potentially?
Right.
Or do you actually understand you and yourself before you even can attempt to understand others to that level as well?
Absolutely. And it's quite funny because so the part of me that's very corporate, so I've got my masculine and feminine energy, so I'm very much into the yin and the yang and balancing that. But I'm very woo-woo. There's a woo-woo side of me. So for me, it's like we had a blue moon yesterday. We're not going to have another one for like 84 years. And I kind of followed this forecast of the blue moon, of the moon energy for the week. And there was a part that said it's around knowing who you are and that you're not stuck in who you are, right? Because if you don't know who you are, then how can you attract your energy? Because what you're doing is that you're masking. You're always masking. So if I'm pretending to be this person, your vibe attracts your tribe. You're going to be attracting the wrong tribe. So you need to be radically self-honest, or try to be honest with yourself to say, who am I? It's such a huge question. I remember I was doing a podcast about 2.5 years ago, and they sent the questions through. And the first question was, who is Nicole? And I was thinking, I don't bloody know. Why are you asking me? I'm trying to work this shit out. I genuinely, and the other question was, what do you do for fun? I thought, oh my God, what do I do for fun? Okay, I watch Disney Channel, I watch the crime channel, and my husband's convinced I'm trying to kill him and get away with it because I am on the crime channel, right?
And then Disney-fy it.
Yeah, and Disney-fy it. Exactly. But it's around, we're so good at giving advice to others. We're so good at leading others potentially. We're so good at saying, this is what you're supposed to do, or ask those questions, especially as a coach, getting people to that kind of end goal, that vision that they say that they're wanting to do, hence we're coaching you. But what about us? And sometimes we can have our own triggers in our sessions, can't we? We can have our own values that are not being met. It's like, oh, I don't agree with that potentially. So as a coach, there's something around, how do we turn up as us? How are we being authentic? And I know some of these words are so overused. Be your authentic self. Bring your whole self to work. Really? You want me to bring my whole self to work? We're going to need like 12 other seats for Nicole, right? Because there's different hats and different personalities. But there is something special around, I am who I am, who I am. And you either like me or you don't. And I saw this quote on Twitter ages ago. One of my contacts, 𝗳𝗓𝗏𝗍𝗓, she put it up on Twitter probably about 3 years ago. And it says, if you're everybody's cup of tea, then you're a mug. And there's something, it's fine. But we're in this era of, we have to be liked. Look at social media. Like, love. Not that pissed me right off, or angry face or whatever. Sometimes I see some stuff on LinkedIn which is really heart-wrenching, and there isn't an emoji to suit it. It's either insightful, or you like it, or you love it, or you celebrate it. So there's this kind of drive, this subliminal message that we have to be great, we have to be liked, we have to be celebrated. Twitter didn't say leaders, it said followers. You're literally saying, I'm following, right? So it's also trying to dissect that and dismantle and unlearn some of the stuff that we have learned, as well as the generational beliefs that's been installed into us. But we don't want to now say, well, I don't believe what my nan used to say actually anymore. That's not my vibe. It's not my jam. But now, am I dishonoring my family? Am I being a disappointment? For me, I'm the only one in my family that's full of tattoos. I've got facial piercings. I've got, I'm the out there one. I'm the wild child, right? And even when you turn up for yourself, you can feel like you are being a disappointment to others, and nobody wants to be that. You mentioned groupthink just now, and that's what happens. And it's, even as a coach or as a facilitator, we've got to be mindful how we say things, because the first person to speak potentially is now going to navigate how everybody else thinks and speaks. So we've got to be super careful when we're asking questions, even in one-to-one coaching sessions. How are we leading that we're not leading? We have to make everybody feel like I can step into my brave space comfortably without judgment, but also bring something to the conversation, because everybody's voice should be heard, right? And that's what belonging is for me, or a part of the journey of belonging, that I can say something and I'm not going to be told, you're talking rubbish, or why would you say that, or feeling less than. I'm not in that business at all.
So, I hear that phrase, that kind of safe space, and think some people call it the brave space, and there's psychological safety, and all these things are getting rattled around pretty much every leadership development training room I see going around. However, it is also true that those spaces still rarely exist, certainly to the degree that we're talking about. So how do you go about helping people to get into that space, rather than having to camp out in the safety of numbers in one of these predetermined categories? How do you get them to step into that space with you?
So if I'm doing like a facilitation or a workshop, because like I said to you beforehand, I don't know if I said it on this or just conversations we've had, everything I do is with a coaching methodology. So or and underpinned by coaching principles, because it's people then taking accountability and being able to speak up and not being dictated to. With my sessions, I have a session agreement as soon as I start. Basically, I go through some stuff, but there's a session agreement around no questions or wrong question. And I'm really keen on kind of reiterating. I'll probably say wrong words, by the way. I'm dyslexic, right? So just work with me. So, like I will say, this is your training session. This is a whole day training with Nicole. Make it count. But then for people to step into that brave space, Rob, we as facilitators, we as coaches, we as anyone who's in that powerful and privileged position, we have to give something of ourselves, because that's how you build trust. And it's giving something of yourself, but also letting those people feel like, yes, I can say something. Another tool that I use is I use Slido, but I know other people use Meta or different ones. I think it's important to have something like that in your sessions because then people can ask questions anonymously. And I always say I would love to know who's asking the question, but I would prefer to know that nobody has left my session not asking the question they wanted to ask. So I always have that as an option for people to ask those questions. Sometimes I will leave it open the night before so somebody can ask that question because they might feel that if they're in the room with someone, they can see them typing, because people do get paranoid and worried about these things, and rightfully so, because we know the backlash. But in terms of people stepping into their brave space, I will give a lot of me, but also I will say, this is your learning. If you don't say it now, then how are you going to know? And as I say, I will put questions that people can answer. So at least I can then say to my client, these are the questions that I asked in the session. And they're normally really powerful coaching questions. Like, do you feel like you could call out certain behaviors? Do you feel seen and heard in your team? Do you feel supported in your team? And some organizations don't want those questions to be asked to those people. I don't work with tokenistic organizations. I just can't, because that's not with my values. So whenever I have my chemistry calls around work that I've been asked to do, I let them know how I operate, how I work, and how this, your belonging can shift along, and how we can empower confidence within your leaders. I've done sessions, Rob, with managers, and nobody wants to answer the question. And I'm like, if you can't do it in your peer group, how the hell are you leading a team? So what we need to then find out is, what are the blockers? So going back to psychological safety, yes, it's a kind of buzz area at the moment, and is it really doing anything? That's when we're asking certain questions like, what do you think the blockage? And what I'm hearing is things like, well, my manager's friends with the CEO, or my manager's friends with the HR department, or it's one rule for them, not a different rule for me. I tend to ask this question, do you feel that you could call out certain behaviors with people who are not in your peer group? So say your team, the answer is normally yes. What about your peer group? The answer is sometimes 50-50. As soon as we go to challenging up, game changer. People just won't. And then when you ask the why, well, nothing's going to happen anyway, or, it's their way or the highway. It's that kind of hippo mentality, that highest paid person's opinion type thing. So people just think, you know what, it's not worth my time. I just want to pay my mortgage, pay my rent, whatever it is, and go home. This is not worth the fight. So people tend not to speak. So we can't be saying to our people, feel like you belong and speak up, if that when they do, nothing happens. The classic case that organizations will do all these surveys, but no one ever hears the results of them. Or you asked, but you didn't do anything afterwards. So that's where the psychological safety has to come from the organization first, for people to then follow that, to say, yes, you're leading with integrity, you're leading with values, and you're doing what you're saying that you do. And it is zero tolerance for all, not for a selected cherry-picked few. It's, so like you say, it's difficult. And then on top of that, you've got people who's got their own kind of their own blockages. So I've asked that question, and I've had people say, I feel psychologically safe in my team. I love my team. I love where I work, but I just know that I've got healing to be done. So I don't give myself. So it's not just as easy as, let's be psychologically safe and whatever you want, tell us. No way. No way. And I do a lot of confidence building. I do one of my main things is really confidence for women in the workplace, female leaders, but I do confidence on a whole. And I say to my clients, you're asking me to come in and build confidence. Confidence didn't just stop or start when somebody started work. You do not know what traumas you could be bringing up. You do not know what past things could be coming up while people are not behaving in a certain way. And I remember I was employing, when I was a senior manager, and we was employing somebody, and he reminded me of my ex-dickhead boyfriend. And I just didn't like him. But I know I said it, and when we had a break, I said to the panel, I said, I don't think I can do this, because I've got this bias straight away that he wasn't him, obviously. So we've got to be really radically self-honest around our own bias, what our blockages are, what habits and patterns are showing up, and how is that being elicited. There's a quote, right, Rob, that I love, and it says, what's not healed in us, we transfer. Whether that's to your children, to your husband, to your mother, to your friends, to your team. So there's certain things that we have to know and do to say, this, I'm the problem, instead of that projecting of somebody else is the problem or something else is the problem. So hence the hive mentality with the corporate beehive. It has to be collective, but it's not a quick fix. And that's what organizations are not really looking at. So this is why, for me, it has to really probably be the courage to empower that person to be, because society dictates to how we should be. And for you to even be yourself is almost an everyday bloody challenge, just to turn up and say, well, you know what, can't be asked.
Well, you mentioned like those surveys, and I think, you know, what I really like about what you mentioned in your workshops there is that anonymity of some of the feedback, because, you know, I think that, you know, there's always a few people that are really good at giving feedback, and then there's that compartmentalization again of going, well, they can do it, so why is not everyone else doing it? Well, because they're different, because all people are different. And you're right, the problem might be that they don't feel safe around you. The problem might be they don't feel safe within themselves. There could be any amount of reasons why that is. What are you doing to try and understand what the barriers are to that truth? And I think, you know, anonymity is a great starting point, and it's not something I necessarily recommend should always be the case. I think it should always be a channel of anonymity, because things can come up. But I think the goal would be to have a culture where we don't need that anonymity anymore.
Absolutely.
And have really candid and honest and great conversations with each other.
Yeah.
But to start with, that's just not possible sometimes. Well, always.
No, it's not. And it does depend on backlashes. And we're human, right? We've evolved. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm probably not the same person I was this morning. I'm that type of girl. But I'm just moving quite quickly, but it's also understanding that on top of the business needs, you know, the business isn't just about making sure that everyone's okay, to an extent, and I say that loosely, and you understand what I mean when I say that. Of course it has to be about your people, but also there's a business need. So you've got deadlines, you've got clients, you've got procedures, processes, all of this stuff that has to go on top of. And that's why that has to be streamlined into those processes and procedures, that you are checking in on your people to making sure they're okay. But this is why I love a coaching culture, because also those people have to realize that partly it's your responsibility too. You know, it can't just be, well, HR didn't do this. Oh, the CEO didn't do this. What are you doing? It's like in a relationship, you know, you might sit there and say, right, this is what I want in a man. Like, I'm talking from the female perspective or my perspective. Like, me, you know, I've got friends who are single at the moment, and they've got a whole list of things of what they want. Rightfully so. Your boundaries should be high. But I'm a mother of boys, so I always say, so what are you bringing to the table? What are you giving? You know, it's got to be a two-way street, because I can say this is what I want, but also what am I bringing? What value am I adding? And that's the radical honesty, Rob. You know, it's not this entitlement and this projecting and this blaming and all the other bullshit that can potentially come with it. Because I genuinely do believe your vibe attracts your tribe. And when you know who you are, you're going to get the right tribe. But I also feel like you should go where you're celebrated, not tolerated as well. You know, so there's there's so much. And as you know, as a coach, it's just an amazing space to be in. I think I love it. Absolutely love seeing those mic drop moments and being able to see those shifts in the organizations that I work with and in the people that I work with. But yeah, it's crucial.
You mentioned, like, you know, the business results, the time, the bonuses, the triggers, the KPIs, all those sort of things that get in the way of this stuff. Even those surveys that you mentioned, you know, quite often they are just done so we get a measure of how our people are feeling last year to this year to next year, and they say it goes missing again. Whereas the real things, and a lot of it boils around, you know, the words you've used, just keep throwing the word trust up on my face again. You know, how much do you trust each other? How much do you actually like each other and want to know more about each other? How much is that true? And if it's not, you know, well, I'd like to go sometimes, you know, if it's not important to you, fair enough, that's okay, but be honest about that, because again, your vibe you talked about and your tribe, so you're going to work with people who don't care about trust, and that's cool. I don't necessarily want to work with you guys though, because, you know, that for me is going to be quite attritional, and it's not going to be a great coaching environment for me to work in. And I've had senior leaders like that who've gone, why is it even important?
Yeah, me too. And the other thing as well is that, what does trust mean? You see, belonging to me, most people knows what it feels like to be rejected, and most people know what it feels like to be accepted. And I know Brené Brown says the opposite to belonging is fitting in. For me, I think the opposite to belonging is lack of acceptance, because to fit in, people still have to accept you. I could do everything. I could go and lose a load of weight if I wanted to be in a particular group with a group of women or membership or whatever it is. I could straighten my hair and not have my afro or not have my braids or not have my locks or whatever. But if I'm not accepted into that tribe, into that community, into that organization, into that membership, then it doesn't matter what I do. And that's giving that power away. Hence, I say, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. So for me, it is around, most people will know what it feels like to belong. You can walk into a room and know somebody's been talking about you, or you can feel like you can cut you can cut the atmosphere with a knife kind of thing. Or you can go into a room and it's buzzing and you feel like, oh my God, this is my jam, I feel like I can say something here. That's what we're really talking about, So when we talk about trust, it means something different to everybody. And when we mention the word trust, as a coach, you're going to know this. When we ask a particular question, it's the first thing that comes to that person's mind. We take it, we accept it. But then what we're going to do is we're going to go deeper, because that first thing is probably what's here, whatever's just happened. But now I want to take it deeper and deeper. So I might say, what does trust mean to you? I want to know what it means to everybody in this room before an organization can even, or a team or a manager can think about building that trust. Because mine could be, well, trust for me is when someone doesn't kick me under the bloody bus. Where trust, it could be something else. But we need to understand, what does trust mean in our team? But what does trust mean to me? Going back to values, our core values, knowing what our values are and living our truth, that's important, because then you're going to see if it clashes with the places that you're operating in, whether that be with family, friends, work. So it's important for us to know what our core values are and how does that actually affect how we operate.
Yeah, what randomly that's made me think of in my mind, and it is random, though I've mentioned this show before. So I occasionally watch Married at First Sight. I love it, and I'm going to own it. It's brilliant. I tend to watch the Australian one because
I keep hearing about this. I keep hearing that's the one to watch.
Love them. Love the experts as well, which is just, anyway. I'll give you a clue which series to start. Give it afterwards. But there's one exercise that they do with the couples, which is listing values and what's important to them, and that could be around things like family, money, all those sort of things. And so they order them individually, and then they go and stick them up on the wall next to each other, and then obviously stand back and look. And those that have done it kind of similarly, obviously they walk away going, that's amazing, we were destined to be together. Very rarely is anyone destined to be together on that show, but anyway, they were destined. But then if it's completely opposites, that is it, that's the first atomic bomb that's been dropped in that show for them.
100%.
But then that moment, you talk about that belonging again, to kind of go, that's not a deal breaker. You need to understand now, not go, that's different, therefore you're wrong and this can't work.
Exactly.
How do I now understand that?
Exactly. And also even with ourselves, because when there's a tool that I use that I was taught in my master coaching around hierarchy of values. And we look at away values or towards values. So away normally means that it's a value because something negative happens, and towards is because something positive. And you also look to see if there's any clashing values. So one of my values could be loyalty per se. But also one of my other values could be freedom. Now, technically, that could potentially clash. And the example that we were given is that we had a man that was in a new relationship, and, he sees himself as really loyal, but he was always out every Saturday with his friends because he wanted his freedom. But what that was effectively doing is there was conflict happening in the relationship now, because you want your freedom, but you want loyalty. And loyalty for that particular lady was to be with me. Yeah. So even when we do have our values, we also have to navigate to say, do they actually match and do they clash? And then to understand them. So it's a lot of inner work that has to really be done, because when you start to do that inner work, when you're working with others now, then you understand it because you've done the journey, you've done it yourself. And that's what I love about coaching as well, is you meet people from all walks of life. Yes, I coach many senior leaders and train much, but they're people. One of the first slides I have, you probably remember, but it's that kind of mask. And I say, remove the corporate mask when it comes to Nicole's sessions, because I don't care about your title. I don't coach the problem. I coach the person. Right. And that's what we do, because then I see the rawness of you. And another example is in coaching, I hired a friend of mine. What's it called? Executive coaching, of course. And she basically was married for many years, had a really, really horrible divorce, hadn't been with another person for that whole time, went on holiday, kind of like Stella gets her groove back, had a holiday fling, went back again, had a holiday fling, and then he started to ghost her. older woman, quite religious, and she just felt disgusted with herself. She felt almost humiliated, and all of the other stuff that comes with it. Now, what that effectively done, Rob, is that now drip fed into her work life, into her family life, into her friendship group. So the first question I asked her was, have you told your coach? And she said, no. And I said, why? She said, because executive coaching, plus I don't know if I trust my coach like that. I don't want to be judged. And I said to her, every coaching session you have from now on is going to be superficial, because your coach will not be able to coach what's actually happening because he or she doesn't know. And I'm not saying that everybody's got to rock up to their coaching sessions and start talking about their sex life, because it wasn't around, for me, it wasn't her sex life that was the issue that she didn't discuss. It was how she felt in that moment, because there's something there that has blocked her, that has made her feel stuck, now has given her that self-worth, lack of self-worth, and all of that stuff. Now, what I would want to know as a coach is why. Because the way this has happened, if something similar in terms of rejection, not feeling, you see where I'm going with that, right?
100%.
So when we're doing our coaching, as coaches, we are taking deep dives. It's not here, it's not here, it's not here. It's way down here. And if we can't build that trust, like you said, like Nicole, how do you build trust in a room with people? How do you build that? Because we don't know what's happening in that room. And that's why I made a point of being trauma-informed. I've spent quite a lot of money on doing trauma-informed courses. I think every single leader should be trauma-informed and should have non-violent communication training. I really, really do, because you don't know what comes up in your session. Somebody comes and says, oh, Nicole, I just want a promotion. Okay, so what? So I had a lady, she is a global HR director, flying around the world doing all the kind of stuff that global directors probably do without being stereotypical. And we were at our 7th session. I'll never forget it. And we were talking, her main issue was she clashed with her CEO. She said that, Nick, I go on stages, I do this, I do that. You know, she's quite decorated in the work that she's done. But for some reason, in the presence of her CEO, she shrinks. And she just doesn't know almost who she is in that moment. And we were talking, and I was doing the value stuff, funny enough. And then she just burst into tears, and she was like, oh my God, literally. And then, you're like, shit, what's the matter? Talk to me. Are you okay? Breathe. And we did all of that. And I was like, talk to me. What just happened? If you feel comfortable enough to tell me. She said, Nick, I've just realized that the conversations that I used to have and the way that I was treated by my abusive ex-husband is exactly the same way that my CEO speaks to me, sends me emails and sends me texts. So in his presence, it's like he's the perpetrator of old. And she just didn't put the two together, because we're thinking work, we're thinking it's not the same person. But that was and as soon as we realized that, she just flourished. She just was able to say, okay, this is what I need to heal. This is what I need to understand. This is what's real. This is what's not. And this is what is. And that's the power of coaching. And that's where the trust also comes in, because we'd had 7 sessions. So when people will say to me, oh, Nicole, can you come and train our senior leader for 3 sessions? I'm like, are you insane? What you mean you want me to tell them what to do? And that's not coaching. That's not my jam. That's not what I do. You have to find that answer. And I'm here to champion you, challenge you, celebrate you, motivate you, and encourage you to get there, right? So the trust thing is huge, Rob. Huge.
All of that from a coaching point of view, because you've mentioned about, people feeling safe enough to open up the things that to you that they're aware of. But in that example there, that's the coaching skill that enables them to become aware of it. Because quite easily, I mean, how many times may a coach, I'm hearing that I'm having trouble with my CEO, communicating with them, don't know what's going on in their relationship, blah, 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 blah. And you go, okay, well, let's jump into some kind of stakeholder management tools.
Exactly.
Like, boom, the first problem, let's sort it. Being able to go into it, just, I think, well, as Michael Bungay-Stanier says, stay curious a little bit longer. Keep going. Just stay curious. And then eventually, like you say, and you know what, there's only coaches out there that feel a little bit uncomfortable going, yeah, but if they do start getting really upset or crying or this, that, and the other, just listen, it's not always you. Well, it's very rarely, if ever, you to solve the problem. And it might not be you that can help them, but that moment might just spark something that they can go and find the person they actually need to help them.
Right. And the thing is, I love what you said. It's that staying curious. And when I talk about curiosity, it's like, I've got 4 grandchildren, and like, the questions, the whys always kills me when they get to that bloody why stage. So my oldest one, when he was younger, he was like, "Why, Grandma?" And I was thinking, he didn't give me enough time to think. He was like, "It's okay, I'll just ask Siri." Did you tell this Siri guy that I'm Grandma? Yeah, don't do my job, kind of thing, right? But we're curious, and they'll say funny things, and we encourage them to be curious. But then we get to a certain age, and I haven't pinpointed when. Maybe there's some research. Maybe there's some research around that. But it's almost like, when do we stop becoming curious? But we don't stop. What it is, society has told us what we should and shouldn't talk about, what we should feel comfortable, and we shouldn't offend people, and we shouldn't do this, and we shouldn't do that. And a prime example I give is like, if you're in a group of friends you haven't seen for a while, and you're going to go and have brunch, and you say, right, let's go around the table and see what's happening in your life at the moment. And someone says, you know what, me and my wife are going on a cruise that we've always wanted to do. Somebody else might say, you know what, I've just bought the car that I've always wanted. Somebody else might say, do you know what, I've got flexible working, so now I can spend more time doing my gardening or going to church or whatever. And then somebody might say, going through a divorce, and my mum's just been diagnosed with dementia. What then happens is that everybody holds that person safe, rightfully so. But what also happens, we're not pushing through to bring that person up. Everybody now, you know what, I didn't really say, but I've got a couple of debts that I can't. And we take, the energy goes like this. Yeah. And we take this energy right here. So it's really mindful of that groupthink again, that pushing through that curiosity, that being able to celebrate oneself, because we're told that we're being egotistical, or we're full of shit, or look at them again talking about themselves. It's a culture of, it has to be doom and gloom. I remember when I used to watch like Coronation Street, and sorry for all the Coronation Street lovers out there, I don't have a problem with it, but I remember watching Dallas and watching Coronation Street, and I thought, well, I mean, I've got a throne, for God's sake, so, you know, I'm going to kind of want...
Yeah, 𝗘𝗩𝗘𝗥𝗔𝗚𝗘 wasn't on the throne, was she? more of a JR thing.
Right. But it's really around when we think about, and how are we showing up, and what drains our energy, and when are we not speaking up, or when are we not being curious? You know, it's understanding that, and like you say, it's stay curious for a little bit longer. Society probably tells us, oh, you shouldn't ask that, you shouldn't say that. But if something comes up in your coaching session, go with the energy, go with that flow. I was doing I will talk about values all day long. My tutor will tell you that after I did that value stuff, it blew me away. And again, I had a session a couple of weeks ago, and I've got somebody who wants to leave her job. She's brilliant in what she does. She's very creative, but she finds that when she gets to a point of her own business, she stops. She just doesn't have the energy anymore. She procrastinates. And she was like, I don't know why, because this is what I want. And I was like, okay. So we did some values work. We did some timeline work. We did some really deep questions. And her value is freedom when it comes to work. Her core value is freedom. So I said to her, okay, so do you think that maybe that as soon as you get to a certain point, because you know that when you run your own business, you've got to put time in, that it's going to infringe on your freedom? And she was like, you know what, when those downloads start to happen, because her fear is that she won't have her freedom. Now, if that's a core value, we now have to work around, okay, so you want to leave your job, you want to start your business, but freedom is your core value. How do we make sure that your freedom remains, but because your job, your business will give you that freedom. But in the beginning, you're thinking, I'm not going to have any freedom. So and that's the work we're now doing. How do we work around your core value and all the other values that fall underneath that? How do we keep your freedom intact? But how do we also find a way for you to leave your job, say within the next whatever that is, for you to do your business? So how do we build your business in a way that your freedom doesn't feel like it's being taken away from you? And again, it goes back to that not knowing, staying curious for long enough, having the confidence to ask those questions, get a deeper dive to get the answers that we need and that our clients require. And that's it.
And then go again, because getting curious about that. So I love to kind of, people who work with me will know that I'm a big fan of scoring these things on 1 to 10 and kind of going, okay, well, if 10's the most freedom in the world, where are you now? Or where do you want to be? Where do you think you'll be? And scoring it. And I think that's great. That's one starting point. So now I know you're at 6 out of 10. But the next thing is I really need to understand what 10 is. Because to me, 10 might be very different to what you are. And to some people with freedom, and I think, a lot of people have thought this way more since COVID and different things that they want from life because they had a bit more of it. Some people, it might be, I want to be able to have lunch with my partner a couple of times a week.
Right.
To other people, it might be, I only want to work 3 days a week and I want to work from home. To others,
Right.
I want to work so hard 5 days a week, but I want August and December off every year. But until we get curious enough to understand what that is and why they want that, what does 10 out of 10 freedom mean to them? The worst thing we can do is go, right, freedom. Yeah, I know that. Let me show you a model about freedom.
Exactly that. And it's really, as you say, it's taking that deep dive. It's delving in. So I used to be a mystery shopper for BMW. By the way, back in the day, I only drove BMWs. I was like, no, I don't want a Mercedes. I want a BM. I was a BM girl. That was Nicole, right?
How do we get a gig like this? I want that one.
Yes, I used to be a secret shopper for BMW. And then so after I did the secret shopping stuff, which was really around their tires. Long story, we'll talk about that over coffee. And then I had to then ring BMW owners who just bought the brand new BMW to find out, what do they think about it and do the scaling stuff. And I remember speaking to this guy, and you've got your questions like you do. And I was like, how's the feature? And he was like, Nicole, honestly, BMW, they're off the chain. They've really like outdone themselves this time, babe. My wife loves it, but I don't even want her to drive it. I love it, If it was, if it was a human, I'd marry it. It was like, he loved this BMW. And the last question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your new BMW? He said to me, about 4 or 5. I was like, what? I literally went, sorry, can I repeat the question?
Yeah. Have you got it the wrong way around?
Back up. And he said, no, it's fine. He goes, yeah, it's brilliant. Lovely car. Love it. And at that point, I didn't question it. But as a coach, I wouldn't have questioned it either, because in my head, okay, because to me, I would have said 100. Completely not listening to the question, 1 to 10, Nicole. I would have, to the way he was talking, I would have given it 1,000,000. But like you've just said, and this is why I was saying beforehand, when people say the word trust, what does trust mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? What does flexible working mean to you? What does it mean to you? Because as soon as someone says in a coaching session, Nicole, I just feel like I'm in a box. I feel like, I just feel like I'm trapped. My next question is, what does this box look and feel like? How big is this box? What does trapped feel? Do you feel it in your body? Where do you feel that? It's really unpacking exactly. And then you do your playback. Okay, so this is what I heard. You said that you feel trapped. You said this. And one of my killer things, and I think I did it for many years, but it's something I've noticed more maybe because of my coaching training. If somebody says the same thing more than 3 times, we need to stop and unpack it. So if somebody keeps saying that they're tired or they're fed up or sorry, we over apologize. What are we saying sorry for? Why are we saying sorry? Or when you say you're tired, what does tired feel like to you? Some people might say just emotionally, Nicole, I just feel like I feel overwhelmed. Okay, so when you say overwhelmed, give me a scenario. And that's when the real shit begins, when you ask those curious questions and go deeper and deeper and deeper. Because my box might be a tiny little box. Somebody else's box could be as big as this room, but they still feel like they're restricted because they can't come out of it. Someone else's box may not even be a box. It may go upwards. It's important because that's how we get to coach the person, when we understand what's in their mind and we're able to unpack it. So yeah. I can't remember what your question was, but yeah, that's the answer.
That's it. Well, I think that BMW story it actually got me thinking about something. It was when you said about the scoring, they scored it 4 or 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Simon Sinek talked about Apple in his famous Start With Why video. And he talked about, you tend to attract people who believe what you believe.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is about, and people listening to this can consider themselves on this, that those who've got Apple devices will absolutely love what comes out, and they will acknowledge very, very clearly what is wrong with those products.
Yes.
So because they've built a relationship based on feeling, they're like, I know it's not got the best camera, and I know it's not got the best battery, but it's an iPhone, it's awesome, and I want it. So yeah, it could be better, but I would have nothing else. Whereas the opposite to that, and I'm not going to try and anger all Android users, but there's a certain subset that might go, I will never even entertain there's anything wrong with this phone. It's better than everything else out there. It's the 10 out of 10. So there is something about that. Again, how is that relationship we've got? Is that based on feeling and emotion and openness and trust? We believe in what they believe. We've connected to something.
Yes. And
or
trust.
Have we just joined a tribe simply because we think that's the place we should be.
And that exactly that. So is this again going back to, are you masking? Are we following? Are we just clicking the follow button? Are we jumping on the bandwagon? Are we trending because it feels like the right thing to do? Or is it because, no, this is actually what I want. I'm very passionate about this. And when you think about politics or religion, if they're rooted in deep, deep, deep beliefs and values. But what we don't realize, or what we probably may not do enough of, is that we can upgrade our beliefs and we can upgrade our values. Sometimes we think it's at a cost because we're no longer in that group anymore. And especially like for me, even when you've got your own business or when you're doing different jobs and you're moving up the ladder, certain people just fall away by the wayside, because I don't think it's a matter of feeling that I'm better than or someone else is better than. My frequency has completely changed. Even in this business, I'm in my 4th year of this particular business. God, trust me, I've had so many. But in this business, I'm in my 4th year. And I know my frequency has changed. I know I now can see exactly what my purpose is. I know what my gift is. I know that even just doing my qualifications in coaching, well, hence why I think that if you're a coach, you should be qualified. You did a poll about that. And I think it came back that people said qualified and accredited. Completely agree. Because we're stepping into trauma. How are you holding people safe? How are you making sure that you're serving your customers right with all that all the stuff we've spoken about on this podcast is some deep shit. It's not just a matter of, okay, so you're feeling a little bit stuck. Here you go. Here's a grow model. Do that and you'll be good. No way. No way.
That was the interesting thing about that poll, was that the majority of people who voted said accredited, qualified, or both.
I noticed.
The biggest voice was those who voted neither. Those were the comments that you don't need it. And I think, this heightens up this difference. Because I think that I've talked a lot about we should use the word and more often rather than or.
Either or.
Should you be not qualified or should you be qualified is an or question. Well, actually, there's room for both. But as a professional coach dealing with this sort of stuff, you need to have experience, background, qualifications, understanding of all of that stuff. If you're a leader and you're looking to have better conversations at work, you don't necessarily have to be a qualified coach. You can do some coaching training. You can even do some things that don't even say the word coaching. I'll give you a couple of links to TED Talks that will probably change the way you have conversations forever, and you will be doing some form of coaching with the people that you work with. It's not your primary discipline. It's giving you a different style to deploy at times. And the example might be, I've got a toolbox in the back. I can use a hammer, but I ain't a joiner or a builder, and I never will be. But just because I can use that hammer and that saw, you don't want me building your kitchen.
Exactly. And I mean,
you really don't.
I believe that. But I've had quite a few people reach out to me on my DM, especially on LinkedIn, asking me where I've done my qualifications, and my question back to them is, why do you want to be qualified? Again, going back to that bandwidth, I have spent so much frigging money in this business on things I thought I needed, which you just don't, because I'm always craving knowledge, thinking I need, that self-doubts that, God, do I need to know more? Do I need to know more? Do I need to know more? So my question to anyone who messages me, I'm like, well, why do you want to? And then I will look at their profile and I'll be like, but you don't present as a coach. So why do you need to qualify as a coach? So similar to what I was saying to you is that, I wasn't saying to you, sorry, it was that meeting beforehand. I was speaking to this lady who wants me to come and do some stuff. And funny enough, she does sex coaching and that. And I was saying to her that I thought about being a therapist, but what I do is the interventions instead. Because a friend of mine basically said to me, Nick, you've done the coaching to its highest level. You don't need to go and do counseling because you're not presenting as a counselor. But what you can do is the trauma-informed, is the non-violent communication. I mean, I've also done a course around the supervision for therapists just to see how it differs from the supervision to coaches. So I don't have to go and do that. So if you're not presenting as a coach, then to me, you shouldn't have to do it. But if you're presenting and you've got a business as a coach and coaching is what you do, then I categorically think that you need to be qualified.
And if there's something, there's something in you that thinks that might be the case in future, there's so many good things and programs out there that you can do as a leadership program that will also give you some sort of recognition towards coaching. Then that's cool. Do it as you go along. Do it in the flow of the stuff you're trying to do anyway. But it's if you're presenting as a coach, if your job, your career is as a coach, then you need to have those credentials. It is my belief as well.
Yes. Cool. So no, I do. I think people should be qualified. I think just like anything, not just coaching, just that you should be qualified. Because like we've said, stuff that comes up in coaching can be some heavy stuff, and every coach should also be in supervision. That's why I was so glad that I became a qualified supervisor like yourself, because we do need that space. We do need to have those conversations.
For sure. I was chatting to someone the other day as part of a coaching circle I'm part of, and they actually said something which is interesting, because we come back to kind of like inclusion, diversity, and all the things that are inside that. And she's going to be kind of doing some supervision with the group that we're with. I'm saying, it's cool, brilliant. The more I get of that, that's awesome. I've done my qualification, I have supervision. And she says, you know what, that's really interesting, because just so many times I come across male coaches and they just refuse to have it. They don't like it. Now, my experience, I haven't got enough of it in that circle to go whether I think that's true, but she has plenty of experience, and that's what she perceives. And it's like, it's interesting for me as to why that might be.
That is interesting. But the thing is as well, I guess it depends on how you do your supervision. Because what I do like about supervision is that because it's peer-to-peer, so we can tell each other stuff, like in coaching, you're not telling anyone, are you? You've got to be very good at putting it out, but I think in supervision, for me, it's more almost like a coach's circle. My supervision sessions are very much around, okay, what do you want to bring to the table? But they're also quite strategic. So for the year, I plan out the topics that we will be talking about, what we can be confronting, to make them better coaches, but also to bring their confidence up, because you never know what's going to turn up in the room. I've had some horrific stories that have come up in my coaching sessions. I had somebody who was raped 4 times in 5 months by 4 different people. I've had someone who was starved and beaten while they were growing up by their mother, and all of the values are around that. I had a lady who was had a failed kidnap attempt. And then 12 years later, she saw the kidnapper on the TV where he had killed 8 children. I think he's one of Scotland's biggest serial child killers. And that was coming up in my coaching session. So we also need to know, how do we signpost to therapy? Because that's not our job. That's not what we're here to do. So we also need to know that, yes, you want to save, you want to help, you want to rescue, that whole drama triangle stuff that comes into play. You want to do all of this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not for you. For me, I just see that I stay in my lane, Rob, and I slay in my lane. And sometimes my lane goes like this, and sometimes I bring it back to what I can manage. I don't mind, but I am not coming out of my lane to pretend to be something I'm not, because you can re-traumatize and damage people, and it's no amount of money is worth it. So as coaches, we also need, and also therapists should know when this isn't really trauma, or not trauma, this isn't really counseling that you need. You probably need to be coached or mentored, whatever that looks like. Like my son at the moment, he was like, Mummy, I really want to be coached. Do you know any good coaches? And I said, well, I do. But when I look at what he's doing in his business, his business is his side hustle and he's working full time. I said, no, you need a mentor. It's not a coach that you need. You need a mentor that can help you to build your business to where you want to be, because you're at a really good level with it now, but you're ready to take the next step. So it's knowing when to signpost and knowing when it's just not you.
Yeah.
And that's also fine. It's not me. It's okay.
Oh, that's cool. I think, one of the exercises I do about coaching is around the knowledge, skills, and behaviours of a great coach. And the conversation that comes up in that bit all the time, every time, is around, does that coach need to be knowledgeable about your business area, your role, your industry, your things? And you know what? If you're going down that mentoring route, then yes, they do. Yes. But as a coach, it actually helps them to not know, to not be tainted with those same things that probably get in your way, and you just accept that are blockers, because they're going to go, oh yeah, I get that. You'll never be able to do that because of that. Yeah, forget about it then. Let's go a different route. They're going to challenge you on it, make you think of it differently.
But it goes back to what we discussed earlier. We're coaching the person, not the job, not the title, not the problem. We're coaching that person because you have the power. It's you taking back your power and using that power to do whatever you need to do. So you know that I am stepping with confidence. I am stepping with empowerment. I am stepping with knowledge. I am breaking that ceiling of limiting beliefs. I am worthy to do this and I can. So that's why we're here, to champion that person. Because my onboarding to coach, to be a coaching client of mine, there's a lot of stuff before you actually get to the session, because I need to know. I've even got a trauma-informed questionnaire that I send out, because it's important for me to know. And I always giggle when I say this in my head, because it reminds me of my other life, that I always want to know, like, I need to know. I need to know, are you on medication? You know, do you have a therapist? Do your therapist know that you're looking for a coach? You know, all of these kind of stuff, like, is there any trauma that I need to be aware of? Is there any safe words? Or is there, you know, there's so much stuff that we need to be asking in coaching before we say, right, I'm going to coach you. That has to be done beforehand.
I feel like we can't draw this conversation to a close without talking about the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 song. I know that's going to seem like quite a tangent for those listening in, but we had a chat a few months ago, and it was about coming onto this podcast, and you took, God knows how we got to the point, but you said, have you ever listened to the lyrics of that? I'm like, yeah, 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏, brilliant. You just hear it, you get up, you shout at the top of your voice, have a bit of fun. No, you said, have you listened to the actual words of it? How have you used the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 song? Why is that ingrained in your psyche, Nicole?
So, listeners, the after 9 part of the conversation, PM that is. So basically, I was asked to write a book, be a part of a multi-author book. Coming up 3 years now. Wow, 3 years. I never thought I would, being dyslexic, just not thinking, what the hell am I going to write about, right? And there's a part of my life that just kept coming up. So for those of you who don't know, it's kind of public knowledge now. A part of my life, I'm a trained professional dominatrix, and I did phone sex for nearly 30 years. But I should say more than 30 years now, because I'm doing it again, to be fair. Just a little bit of confessions there. But I'm doing it now.
To the confessional.
Yeah, so I'm doing it again now because I've got another program around channeling your inner mistress. Again, another podcast, another conversation. Anyway, so in my book, I talk about how does a phone sex operator and a professional dominatrix meet the world of a corporate belonging. And for me, the two are more or less the same. I just don't tie people up and stuff, but they're more or less the same in terms of people just want to be seen, heard, and accepted. And there's so much taboo around the sex industry, and there's misconceptions as well. And I just wanted to say, okay, so I'm in this world and I'm slaying in this world, and I was extremely good in this world. And the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 song is around that lack of communication. And a lot of the conversations I had in the phone sex world and even the dominatrix world, yes, it's a highly sexually charged industry, but you're speaking to people who do not want to be judged, that want to be accepted. They may have a kink, and what? From you're not doing anything illegal with that, you should be allowed to, right? And I had a particular customer, and I talk about it in my book, who his wife would take a bath every Sunday. He would then take her underwear, and then he would go on a walk, call me. I would pretend to be the wife, and he would basically have her knickers in his hands while he was sniffing them, right? And I used to say to him, why don't you just tell her that you like how she smells and that, you know, you enjoy certain things? And he was like, I can't. So in the 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 song, which many people know but's not listened to the words, it talks about this man who says that he's been with his wife for a long time. He loves her, but it's just the spice isn't there anymore. And he sees an ad in the newspaper that basically says, you know, she's a bored housewife and she'd like to meet up and start an affair. And he just basically decides that's what I'm going to do. So he replies to the ad, and they decide to meet each other. And when they get to the bar, she walks through the door and he realizes that the woman who's replied to the ad is actually his wife. And he says to her, I didn't know you like 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and dancing in the rain. She's not much into yoga. And basically what they're saying is that they both are very stale in their marriage. Nobody said anything. They were going to literally have this affair, but they ended up that it was going to be with each other, which basically meant that they just should have had the conversation. And that's just what I found a lot in phone sex. That's what I found a lot in being a professionally trained dominatrix. And I keep saying professionally trained because you do have the other side, which is called lifestyle dominatrix, which means you live that lifestyle and your partner or you would be submissive or be dom, and it's something you do all the time. The professionally trained is when you're being paid to do it. So that's why I do make that differentiation. But also I realized I was coaching. Remember I said I was always coaching? I've always coached, you know, because I've had epic conversations in phone sex, absolutely epic. And the part when I was doing that, what was born out of that is that I would then have these couple conversations, and I used to train couples or speak to couples or coach couples to bring the spice back into their marriage. Then I would speak to just groups of women about sex, and I have epic conversations around that too. So for years, I've realized that I've been able to hold that space and people to trust me. And especially when you're talking about sex, trust me, there ain't no more naked than that. There isn't any more naked than that. And when people are talking, because it does affect other areas of their life. I'm not saying sex is the icing on the cake, because you could eat ice cake without icing, but you might like a bit of icing or a little bit of cream, whatever it is. So yeah, so that's where the pina colada bit came from. So even though I have all the tools and I've gone to master coach now, I also have the life tools, Rob. And to me, I'm not massively a person that spills off stats. I'm dyslexic. I'm not going to remember the year or the stats. So I'm not good at giving stats at all. But what I am very good at is talking to people and serving them and basically tapping into my purpose and my gift. And when somebody can actually talk to you about their sex life, or about, I put on weight, I've gone through menopause, or a man saying I've started to bald, or I don't have the sex drive anymore, and now they're feeling emasculated because they're feeling that they can't get an erection. All of that stuff is huge, and we don't talk about it enough. And that's the whole reason why I've got my offering now, Channel Your Inner Mistress. And I know that's where my power is. And that's basically where I'm gravitating to with all of what I've learned, and all of what I can bring to the table to make people feel like they belong, because that's important to me.
Well, back to the start, belonging.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And, you made me listen to that song all the way through. Oh, I made you. I started playing it down the meeting. I'm like, oh yeah, there's actual verses here, and what's going on? All right, okay. That's a bit. I've got so many questions now. I've got so many questions I'd want to ask them now. Probably more so now I'm a coach rather than just some sort of 18-year-old in an 80s club. But anyway, that aside, it comes back again, doesn't it? It's the freedom and the trust and space to communicate. You mentioned authentically earlier on, but without judgment, being listened to. Yeah. And then boom. And then they've arrived at that destination at the end of the song, and then they know this about each other, and they've not had that conversation for God knows how many years or decades. Wouldn't it have been just quicker just to sit down and be honest with each other?
Exactly. And you're not having to hide parts of yourself. Nobody's saying, I mean, this is an extreme example. Nobody's saying go into a boardroom, take off your knickers and whack it on the table and then start talking about being a dom. We're not saying to do that. And we're not saying that you have to talk about your sexual fantasies and your kinks. But when you feel like you are whole, then you can know oneself and you can belong to self.
Love it. Love it. So we've got to the part of the show then, Nicole. Yeah. And we look back all the way through this chat, and what a wonderful chat it's been. What might we call the show? What might be a good title for the show?
Well, now we've finished. I don't know. You're trying to make it sound like I'm going to remember what we said. I'll probably look at this later on and say, shit, did I say that? Oh my God.
What stands out for you?
It depends if you want to be controversial or not, because there's something, again, is that I'm such a massive advocate of that we should just be ourselves. But it's not really it's not a podcast through the lens of a dominatrix or a phone sex operator at all. It could be to one extent. I don't know, because we only really talked about it a little bit. I want something catchy and edgy, to be honest with you, because I think we said some really good stuff. It's so nice talking to other coaches who are coaches, man. Good. So good, you're good.
There you go. There's the title. So nice talking to other coaches who are coaches.
Yeah. See, only coaches who are coaches know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I've written down, well, right at the start, I wrote down, because you Barbara Streisand thing, be a fucker. But I thought, you kind of almost in there. And then obviously, because we've done it at the end, there's the old, do you like pina colada?
Yeah.
There's something else. Is there any, what else sticks out for you somewhere in the middle? Oh, by the way, you wanted to give a call out to McGill-Higgins for the earrings, so maybe that could be the title.
Yes, I do. Michelle sent me these beautiful earrings in a present. I don't know if you can see them, but they've got bees on them.
Again, go over to the YouTube or Spotify video, take a look at them.
Yes, I've got my bee ring and I've got my bee necklace. But yeah, Michelle-Higgins gave me, and it's the first time I'm wearing them. I went to wear them for something really special. So you're special, babe. You should feel VIP appreciated here. because I've had them for a hot minute, and I've not worn them. So today is their debut. And I love tassels. I'm a queen of tassels and queen of the hide, obviously.
Love it.
Yeah.
Loads of bees around you. Brilliant stuff. If people would like to know more or follow you or keep up to date with what you're doing or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best places for them to follow you, Nicole?
I would say LinkedIn, but also my website. It always sounds so bougie when I say this, but if you literally type my name into Google, everything's there. And if you want to see other podcasts I've done on stuff, but my website's there. So if you want to book a chemistry call, and if anything has come up today, please do reach out. It's not all about booking clients and chasing the money. Yes, of course we do need it, but if something has come out, even if something's triggered you, or if I've said something that you'd like to unpack with me, reach out. So you can always go to my website and just go to contact me, and then just put that through, or you can go on LinkedIn and send me a DM. I'm pretty good at that. So yeah,
awesome.
Contact me, talk to me.
I will put those links into the show notes for you. So if anyone listening wants to do that, just click on the notes. They're all in there, and you can get in touch with Nicole.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that chat. I've really enjoyed it, and we will have that coffee chat soon.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye.
All right, bye.
So that brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Leadership Untitled podcast with me, Rob Moores. Also, a big special thank you to our guest, Nicholè McGill-Higgins, and as well as everyone out there who listened in today. Just a reminder that this episode is called Do You Like Piña Coladas? And for good reason. Some of the messages out there that maybe we don't listen long or deep enough about to actually understand the true meaning. I hope this helped you in some way today, and please give us a follow, a like or a subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. See you next time.